Hello and welcome to One Take Sports Podcast, where we do sports podcasting in one take. This week we're going to be reviewing all of the free agency moves. There's been a couple big ones, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Orlando Summer League and some of the Vegas stuff that's happened so far. I'm sitting here with Steve. Steve, why don't you say hello?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Steve, and I am just super excited about the week. I'm pumped. It's been a great week for the NBA. I think the NBA wins along with other teams. Also, LeBron has been the story all week. Everybody was waiting on the decision. I think things went really, really well for him this week.
Absolutely, I agree. Jumping right into LeBron right here, that's a really great jumping off point for the whole week because obviously he's the big news. I think that you touched on a little bit as far as it being a win for the league. This decision has, people remember LeBron as being a hero in Cleveland, and when he left and went to Miami, I remember there was an interview with Dwayne Wade, and they were talking about the black uniforms, the black and white uniforms, and Dwayne Wade said that they like them because it sort of helps them to embrace a villain mentality. And they played like that for a year where they, were sort of running up the score on people and sort of bullying people around. And then the next year there was an interview with LeBron, and he said, they'll tell you to be a villain, they tell you this and that, and they tell you who to be, and at some point you have to decide who you want to be. And I think that almost it was almost like a foreshadowing in a book, where he realized at some point in this decision that he wanted to go back to being the hero. He wanted to step out of the shadows, step out of the black, and step back into the light and be a hero to the city of Cleveland.
That's a pretty good point. I pretty much feel the same way. I almost feel like this is a summer of maturity for LeBron also, where now he's embracing, he mentioned it in that eloquent letter that was put out there, that he's embracing working with the younger guys and so forth, and it's the shift in focus in the NBA, and I just see it as, another just step in his maturity, because you can almost understand somebody like him being immature for years, being handed everything, since he was, sixth grade or whatnot. So, like I say, I really like what he's doing. I like what he's said so far. The fact that he's kept everything low key. Once again, it's great for the league. It's great for the Cavaliers. It definitely gives them a fighting shot. We've already mentioned before in the past that if you put LeBron on pretty much any team, they're going to be in the conversation of the upper echelon of their conference. So, that's just such a win for the team and so forth. And it's going to be interesting to play out. I've been doing a little bit of homework on Dave Blatt, and I think he really does bring a lot to the table also. So it's just going to be exciting to see. And by this happening this week, all the chips are, starting to fall into place with the other free agents out there. Now we're seeing the direction that most teams are going in. And it's just really, really exciting time.
Well, I totally agree. Let's try to stick with LeBron a little bit here at the beginning. I know there's tons of great news out there, but I think that his decision is such a big piece in NBA history. I remember when he left and went to Miami, I remember a lot of the big names throughout NBA history, the legends, whether it was MJ or Barkley. I think even Hakeem Olajuwon chimed in on it, and they said that they completely disapprove of that decision, that they don't think that it was the right move for him, that that he should never have left his hometown team. And I just sort of want to hear your thoughts on, I know all of those guys, Jordan left the Bulls for a little while, and then he came back. Barkley ended up leaving and going to Houston to play with Olajuwon. And even Hakeem left Houston and went to Toronto. So all of those guys, to be fair, it was at the end of their careers usually, but all of those guys did, they didn't play all together, they didn't play all in one city or for one team for their entire careers. And so I just sort of was wondering if you had any insight as far as like that was sort of before my time as a big NBA fan.
Well,
And you're the old guy. You probably do remember those eras.
well, I've been following the league seems like forever now. And I was trying to rack my own brain. I've been scouring the web and so forth, and I was trying to come up with some type of comparison how this all went down with LeBron and so forth. And like you mentioned, it was really a historical moment for the NBA because there really wasn't a historical comparison out there that you could think about in the past. You mentioned MJ. His was definitely different because he didn't leave his hometown team um, high and dry and so forth per se. He was so loved at the time that when he made the decision, his father had passed away, so forth. So when he retired the first time, Chicago fans still absolutely loved him. The country absolutely loved Jordan. He won 3 championships for him. And so it was definitely a different feeling. People weren't burning his jerseys and so forth. And we all know that, during that retirement, he went on and, took a shot at playing AAA baseball. And, it's funny, I remember when he actually came back to the league because at the time, baseball was on strike. And that was in 95, March of 95, and baseball was on strike, but he was a minor league player. So they were asking him to break the picket lines, and he wouldn't do it. So he quit baseball. That's when he stopped playing baseball. And then I remember the weeks leading up to it, about 2 weeks, the stories just started developing that you heard rumblings that he might come back. He might come back to the Bulls and so forth. And just, in mid March one day, he just comes out with a press release saying nothing but, I'm back. And, the only similarity between LeBron and MJ in this situation is the rumblings before it was going to happen. About a week before, it was, the whole country was on MJ watch. And, of course, he goes back. The rest is history. Is for the Bulls. They turn around and they three-peat again. Um, yet,
Well, so wait a second. So you did bring something up there where you said like the whole country loved MJ, and I again I wasn't really I was 7 years old when all that stuff was going on, so I wasn't really too aware of what was going on. I was just starting to sort of play basketball myself, and I guess everything that I've heard about the early MJ years since then, and even with stuff like his speech a couple years ago, where his Hall of Fame speech and stuff, where he seemed to come off sort of arrogant and sort of not very humble, and everything, all the press around that time when he did that, I guess the press made it seem like that was sort of a reflection of his career, is that he was always regarded as someone who was a little arrogant. I know that there was a lot of rumblings around NBA fans that he was breaking the league because of just the stuff that he was doing and how many people wanted to be like Mike, and not really working on their fundamental games like you would see that people that try to emulate Bird or someone else would be trying to do.
well, I think the problem there is, see, what it was though, he wasn't hated. He wasn't regardedly hated the way LeBron. I'm going to actually go out on a limb here and say the way LeBron was. Because I think the love fest is coming back for LeBron right now in the last week. Um, but the whole country, there was just if a Michael Jordan highlight came on TV, you had to stop and watch. If the Bulls were playing and they were on TV, it is hard in the bars. People people loved MJ and they really didn't, because of his game, they really didn't care. I absolutely agree with you. I agree with you that he set basketball back some because of the way he played. The monster dunks, the windmill jams, the whole thing. Because honestly, I think a lot of uneducated basketball people didn't realize how good he really was. They knew he was great, but a lot of people thought he was great because of the dunks and so forth. that was just a facet of his game. But that's what
Well, I
but
mean,
that's what made
when he
Sports
was
Center.
doing, I'm sorry.
But that's what made Sports Center. That was a facet of his game. But that's what you see every night. If you didn't follow the game intensely, it's when you watched him play full games and you watch what he did for the team on a night in, night out basis, with passing, with rebounds, the whole game as he got older in his career, the shooting and so forth. And trust me, when Michael Jordan first hit the NBA, I didn't like him. Um, my views on Michael Jordan, to give you a comparison to today, um, is when he first came into the league, I saw him as a Carmelo type.
Oh, really?
A big time scorer who couldn't do anything else, and I didn't think he could win. I really didn't. But he turned me, and like I say, just a lot of the kids and so forth, the kids who were rolling around with their Jordans on and all that stuff, they just didn't understand his total game, his total package, how he made everybody on the team better.
Well, that was what I was about to say. Was that Jordan was really the start of the, you said that like when a Michael Jordan highlight came on TV, everyone stopped and watched. It was really the start of like Sports Center showing highlights, wasn't it? I mean, again, it was before my era as really a cognizant basketball fan, but it doesn't seem like I recall, or have seen too much of, there being a market for people to sit down and watch, an hour long show about just highlights around sports. And now it seems to, I mean, they can do that for an entire day, and they have networks that, an entire franchise built off of it, a dynasty even.
Well, I'd say, it was a few years before Jordan when you had Magic and Larry come into the league in the early '80s and so forth. That's when it really started to take off. But what you said right there, which could get us back, a little bit on the LeBron thing, is it's just it's really hard to explain, but ESPN in a way has ruined basketball, true basketball.
I completely agree.
And I just think people don't see all the time. And if you sit there and if you actually just sit there and watch ESPN highlights, you're not going to get the whole game. You won't understand the game, and you won't see. And truthfully, LeBron James is once again another product of that ESPN, that you're going to see the great plays and so forth. But what's even worse now is you're going to see everything that LeBron does, which you didn't get so much with Jordan. Jordan would go do his thing. He'd go gambling. He definitely had some issues, but you never heard about it on a daily basis. You didn't hear about it on TMZ. You didn't hear about it on all these shows. The internet hadn't blown up to the point it is today, that within the matter of 15 seconds you're informed. So it was definitely different, but there wasn't a hatred for MJ the way there was for LeBron.
Well, do you think that hatred would have been there if he was as overexposed as? I mean, I don't think that LeBron has really stepped into the negative media spotlight at all.
Well,
but if Michael was exposed like that, as far as his gambling and as far as the other skeletons in his closet, do you think that the general public would have turned on him like they have turned on LeBron, or like they did when he joined Miami?
I'm not sure. You know why? Because he was that good to pretty much overcome anything. He really was. He was that good. I mean, any conversation in the NBA, this wouldn't even be a conversation anywhere, anyways. The Michael Jordan's number one, and then you go from there. He was the best player the game's ever seen, and he was that good that he could overcome a lot of that. I mean, he was just the type of person. Media, the gameplay itself, regardless of what it was, he would adapt, and he still would have been great. He found, you watched the documentary on the Bad Boys, and how they would beat up on Michael Jordan. And what does he do? He just comes back and beats right back up on them. He just adjusts his game to that. So,
yeah.
But like I say, just kind of getting back, and we definitely want to get back on LeBron and where it comes. So the whole MJ leaving and coming back was totally different. It was different, and a couple of the players that I kind of thought maybe, but not even close, is like Magic Johnson, for example. When he left for HIV and so forth, he was still around the game. He was in the '92 All-Star game. They had him playing that. Near the end of the '93-'94 season, he came back to coach the team, which
Really?
which went horribly. It went terrible. They ended up 5-11, and that was the end of his coaching career. And then he just, he made his final comeback, but by the time he made his comeback, he didn't play a ton of games or anything. And, it wasn't the huge news because he was still in the spotlight. He was always around the game. Even after he left, he was always around the Lakers. So that doesn't compare to LeBron. You think about Steve Nash. He got drafted by the Suns, but he only played there 2 years, and they were extremely uneventful. He was averaging 5 points a game, 2.5 assists.
Well, wait a minute. No, Steve Nash played there a lot longer than that.
No, he had left. He left. He played 2 seasons for the Suns, and then he left. He played 6 seasons in Dallas after that, and then he went back to the Suns in '04 when he won his MVP, and when he won his MVPs. But it wasn't Steve Nash's coming home. By the point he finished up in Dallas, it was, oh wow, we're getting Steve Nash. He's awesome.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that all these guys that we're talking about, they never left a team, went to another team for a couple of years, and came back. And again, I mean, like you were talking about Steve Nash. Well, he's not, a Phoenix kid. It's not like, he grew up in the slums of Phoenix like LeBron grew up in the slums of Cleveland.
Well,
he really is a Cleveland kid, and I think that people are really actually, I mean, I know as much as I am not a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, if LeBron were to win a championship for the city of Cleveland this year or, at any point in the near future, I would be rooting for him.
I mean, hats off, congratulations, because you're doing it. Because I think the way people are seeing it is now, if he wins a championship, he's doing it the right way. I think after his career is said and done, if he does win a couple, that's what my numbers at for Cleveland championships with him too. And if he gets 2 championships with that team, I think he can actually and Cleveland should thank him for leaving and going to Miami for 4 years.
Because it gave them a chance to rebuild.
To get up there and grow up. You know what he did in those 4 years in Miami? He went to college for 4 years. He was never a kid. He was...
Yeah, that's what he said since.
Exactly. He said it, and it makes perfect sense. Because he never had a chance to grow up. So, you know what? He went to school for 4 years. And he came back a better man, I think. I might be wrong. We know a PR guy wrote the letter, but I'm sure that's his thoughts and so forth. So I'm really happy. I'm really, really happy to see, where they go for it. But, we got in a really roundabout because anytime you start talking about Michael Jordan, the conversation could go for hours. But, just to make my point is, and like you said, this is unprecedented in the NBA. This is something we haven't seen before. It's a great story for the NBA, and one of the other things is a couple of weeks ago you had mentioned that if he went back to the Cavs, you're not sure if the open arms would be there, and I think you've been proven wrong now.
I absolutely have, and I'm totally willing to eat crow on that. I thought that they were going to still remember the guy that just left them, and I think if he had sat down like he did the first time, and he had a decision 2.0 where he sat down in front of a whole bunch of cameras, and he just, basically broke the news, and everyone went, did their thing, he wouldn't have proven that he had matured at all. The letter, the fact that he is basically just saying, that's how he said that he wanted to do it. Now he's going to go to Cleveland and do work. I mean, he said that.
Yep.
I think that showed the city of Cleveland, it showed everyone around the league that he is ready for the next stage in his life, ready for the next stage in his career, and ready to do that with his hometown team, which is just a fantastic story.
Absolutely. Well, all right. So you mentioned that now's the time he's going to do it, what he's going to change in Cleveland and so forth. Um, so you're the head coach over there. Um, you know, let's talk a little bit about what it's going to mean for the Cavaliers on the court. And which role are they going to take? What identity? What do you think that team's going to shake out to be? Possibly what moves they make, or even if they stay put, how do you see that team competing?
Well, I mean, the big thing is that everyone is talking about them going after Kevin Love. And obviously, if you add a player like Kevin Love to that team, they suddenly become an incredibly powerful, that's a team that's going to win multiple championships. I honestly don't think that they need to make that move in order to be at that level. I just don't think that it's going to happen right away unless they go get Kevin Love. But you look at that roster, and a lot of people are talking about, the fact that LeBron and Kyrie, they can't play well together because Kyrie he's not a catch and shoot shooter. He needs to have the ball in his hands, and he needs to be creating his own shot. That's how he was, in college. That's how he's played his entire career. The two of them, and there's been people who have said that combination might not work out on the floor. That's absolutely ridiculous. The idea that a player of LeBron James' caliber and the unselfishness that he displays would not be able to work with someone who is as skilled and as talented as Kyrie Irving is just, it blows my mind. There are a lot of ways that they could work well together. Kyrie is a very good pick and roll player. If they ran pick and rolls with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, are you kidding me? Who in the league is going to be able to stop that? And then it gets a little bit more challenging when you talk about their starting lineup. I think that just based on what we've seen in Summer League, and obviously we're going to get to Summer League later on, but Anthony Bennett is showing that he is here. He is. I don't want to say he's worthy of the number one draft pick because I still think that was a terrible decision by the Cavaliers to pick him up last year. But he's showing that he is at least, he's showing he's a first round pick. He's athletic. He's able to bang inside. He's getting rebounds. He can block shots. So it's up to them. It's up to Blatt what he wants to do. They could run a combination of Kyrie, Wiggins, LeBron, Tristan Thompson, and Anderson Varejao. They could run Bennett out there with them. The having the fact that they can run Andrew Wiggins and LeBron James on the court at the same time, because honestly, I think that they can do that.
Well, what they could do, because I was thinking of potential lineups if this team stays put right now, and you also have Dion Waiters in the mix, and that's I think how you can keep Wiggins and LeBron on the court at the same time, to have an outside shooter.
Well, Dion Waiters, the thing I don't like about Dion Waiters, and the reason that I left him out of that initial discussion, is because Dion Waiters and Kyrie don't work well together. Again, back to what Kyrie's strengths are and back to what Dion Waiters' strengths are, they're both guys that like to be able to shoot off the dribble, not guys that are going to, if Kyrie draws two defenders to him and then he kicks out to the corner, Dion Waiters' strength is not to be able to catch that ball and instantly put up a three and put it in the bucket. They're both guys that like to attack and pull up and shoot off the dribble. So playing Dion Waiters out there, I mean, I think that's going to happen, but a more interesting lineup, which would be a good way to get Wiggins some playing time, because nobody's going to be able to pay attention to Andrew Wiggins when you have Kyrie and LeBron on the floor, right? I mean, that's a given. A more interesting lineup would be actually to move Waiters and the other big man, whether it's Anthony Bennett or whether it's Tristan Thompson that starts, move Waiters and that other big to the bench, and actually they would have one of the deeper bench units in the league. it would be an interesting experiment. I mean, obviously, Blatt is going to see where Wiggins is at as far as his development goes. I think it would be a good way to get a kid who has superstar potential on the court, seeing minutes without necessarily making him the focus of the other team's game plan, because they can't focus on him. That's the reality of the situation.
That's a good point.
Those two guys are going to draw so much to them that all it's going to take is that backdoor cut by Wiggins. Both of them are good enough passers. Wiggins can jump through the roof. That's an alley-oop almost every time. Backdoor cut off the baseline or off the wing. I would like to see Wiggins improve his shot before I say, he's definitely the two guard. But it's an interesting lineup, and it's actually one of the bigger lineups in the league if you're starting Andrew Wiggins out there.
So I mean, in your opinion, there's no secret out there. Not sure if they're going to be able to get him, but they'd like to get their hands on Love. But for the long-term future of the Cavs, do you think they actually might be in better position if they don't get Love?
That's a really good question.
To spend the first year developing these young players, not giving up on Wiggins, because I honestly, with the upside of Wiggins, I'm not sure I'm not giving that up for Kevin Love. And I
absolutely wouldn't give that up for Kevin Love.
And at least have to see what he was going to do, because Wiggins' upside, coming out of the draft and upside, number one, is pretty much the best player to come out of the draft since LeBron himself. So,
well, let's not go quite that far, because I think that a more, if we were going to say that, the best player would have to be a combination of Parker and Wiggins, because Wiggins is not NBA ready yet. And the thing, I said put him in the starting lineup. It's not because I think that he is by any means ready on the offensive level or on the offensive end. He's a great defender. He can lock pretty much anyone down. Most of the good two guards in the league, I know like James Harden is widely considered as being one of the better two guards in the league. He has a problem dealing with guys who have length. I remember when they played the Suns last year, and the Suns put P.J. Tucker on him. And P.J. Tucker is a very underrated defender, but the problem that Harden had with him was his length. The same thing if you look at Kobe. Kobe was playing it was before his injury, obviously. And it was that the same year that he decided to be a point guard and go off for like 12 assists every game. And the decision, I'm a Rockets fan, so, just getting that out there for the people who haven't heard the first podcast. I remember watching the Rockets games from that year, and we would put Parsons on him. And Kobe actually praised Parsons after one of the games, as saying he's one of the better defenders, one of the better young defenders in the league. And watching him play, it was because of the length. Well, Andrew Wiggins is a very lanky, athletic guy. He's actually more athletic than Parsons. I think he can keep up with any of the two guards in the league. It's going to be down to fundamentals, keeping him grounded, which I think that having a guy like LeBron next to him who can show him how to play great defense, all-star, MVP level defense, having that as an asset next to him on the floor or in the huddle is going to be an incredibly valuable resource for the Cavaliers.
Well, no doubt about it. That just comes right back to LeBron's maturity and so forth. He knows, like we said, he said in the letter that, he's going to be teaching Wiggins. He's going to be teaching Irving. And like you say, if he works with it, and that's why I think without a Kevin Love, the problem they would have if they picked up Kevin Love right now is the pressure is on that team to win the championship this year if they pick up Kevin Love. Even giving up Bennett, we don't know what Bennett can do quite yet. Like you said, Summer League, Summer League he did really, really well, and his Summer League play could actually find his way onto the Timberwolves in a trade like that. But I just think for the long-term development of the team, it might not hurt for them not to have the pressure that you need to win a championship in 2015.
Well, let's be fair here. When you're looking at trading players as opposed to trading picks, you're looking at their direct value on the team. I think Wiggins is one of those guys who has so much potential that, yeah, you can look at him as a long-term prospect. He has so much exciting potential. He has so much athleticism, and again, he can just do so many things on the floor that, yeah, you can look at him as far as what his ceiling is going to be. Kevin Love, you know what he is, and I think that what Kevin Love is higher than whatever the ceiling for Anthony Bennett is going to be.
Oh, no
You
doubt.
know, I mean,
Yeah,
or
no doubt about it.
absolutely. So, I mean, if you do make that trade and it's basically, Anthony Bennett or Tristan Thompson and a first round pick, whatever the combination is, if, an interesting one would actually be getting rid of Waiters and one of those young bigs, maybe even, a first round pick down the road in exchange for Love. I would do that in a heartbeat if I'm in Cleveland. The thing is I don't think Flip Saunders out in Minnesota is going to pull the trigger on that deal, just because he basically wants Wiggins for a player of Love's caliber, and I wouldn't give up Wiggins for him.
No, definitely.
Because you're right. I think long term down the road, if Wiggins develops into anywhere near the player that we think he's going to, that Cavaliers team is just absolutely unbeatable.
And face it, man, as a sports fan, we really want to see LeBron and Wiggins playing together. As a sports fan, I mean, I'm just dying to see them together. But, one of the guys that you, just on that team real quick, one of the guys that you, weren't so big on being Waiters, but he is actually one of the team's best shooters. Now, Dave Blatt, he's all about the motion offense. And with the spacing, and he does need some spot-up three-point shooters on that team. And, LeBron's going to score for you. But after LeBron, that's going to be the question, is where are you going to get your points from on that team? That's one of the questions that I haven't answered yet.
Well, I mean, Kyrie Irving can drop buckets. It's not like we're talking, Raymond Felton, who's not going to score for you at all or only score 8-12 points a game.
True.
Kyrie Irving is one of the best scoring point guards in the NBA. He is going to be, I mean, he's a good 3-point shooter. He just likes to do it off of the dribble. He's just not a guy that is going to be able to fill a two-guard role, which is what I think you sort of have to do, is you have to have two guys, if you're going to play Waiters, you have to have a second guy who either is just going to feed him the ball, and you're not counting on him for points at all, like a Ricky Rubio,
right?
Or you need a guy that can do both, similar to Waiters. A guy who can catch and shoot. Well, Waiters isn't as good of a catch and shoot player, but an interesting match for a backcourt guy for him would be like a Goran Dragic or an Isaiah Thomas. I think Phoenix, if they want to keep making this run on guards that seems to be predominating their free agency, I think if they want to make a play for Dion Waiters, that would be a good move. I just don't know if they would be able to have the pieces to send to the Cavaliers.
Right, and just finishing up on them just a little bit. A move that I think, and I'm not one to sit here and speculate. I'd actually rather talk about things after they happen. But one of the moves that they could pick up, and I don't think it's a bad move for a year or two, is, believe it or not, Ray Allen. Ray Allen in 12 minutes off the bench, 12 to 15 minutes off the bench. Him and LeBron are tight, and you'll play till you're 40-something years old in this league if you can bury the jumper. If you can hit the three, you got to play. It's like a left-handed pitcher in baseball. If you can do it, you can do it fairly well. There's a place in the league for you, and I can't think of a better place for him to go, actually.
Well, one of the interesting, things about bringing Ray Allen there is actually the biggest weakness of Andrew Wiggins' game on offense is his ability to shoot the deep ball. And if he is a teachable kid, which all of the reports say that he is, there is no person better to teach shooting to a young guard than Ray Allen.
Exactly. To show him the way Ray Allen has done it his whole career, the hours in the gym, the constant shooting, the mechanics, the repetitiveness, and yeah, that would be, that's something I didn't even think about. I was just thinking about on the court itself, and that's something I actually didn't give it in. That's a great point that you have right there. to show him how to shoot, um, to show Kyrie Irving when to shoot.
Yeah.
It's just another piece that would be great, and you know, the team's going to figure it out. The team's absolutely going to figure it out. I don't think they have any worries about figuring out. They're going to be a very good team. I really did my homework the last couple days on Dave Blatt there, and I guess internationally he's known as an offensive genius. Um, so he's a very good offensive coach. He put some good assistants around him. I don't think that team's going to have um, just any problems in the next few years. He's going to mentor the youth. He's going to be leading that youth movement, and it's almost the way that you see in the NBA going right now. And I just truly love it. Truly love it. Um, I've talked about LeBron. We've been talking about LeBron for a week, and um, you know, I just now I'm ready to move on to some other people out there. That's definitely for sure. But do you have any final thoughts on him?
Well, I guess the final thing is, when we were just talking about Dion Waiters, and I just want to revisit him a little bit because we were talking about his shooting ability, and he's not as good of a shooter as people think. I actually just pulled up his stats while you were talking, and his shooting percentage is less than 35% on his career. 35% 3-point shooter for a two guard. There are fours in this league that shoot better than that.
No, but over the years he's definitely improved. He's improved.
He's been in the league for 2 years. He's gone from shooting 310 to shooting 370.
It's an improvement. It's an
increase.
improvement on that. But on that team, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe on that team, he was their best shooter.
I would have to pull up Irving's 3-point shooting statistics, but again, the point that I'm making is that you have a guy who you can mold like Wiggins, and you have guys, again, and I don't know if they're going to start Wiggins right away. I think that if I was Blatt, that would be one of the biggest question marks in my mind, is whether I go out and I pick somebody up for the the vet minimum or whatever, just to figure out how to get another shooting guard on the floor to give Wiggins time to mature. But at the same time, you have a guy that you can mold in Andrew Wiggins, and you can turn him into a catch and shoot player. He's not developed his shot to the point yet where it's not like he's so set in his ways that he's not going to be able to change it. And if, again, just your idea of bringing Ray Allen in to work, obviously him and LeBron get along well. I think that if you brought Ray Allen in more as a mentor / coach, and you brought him off the bench for 10, 12 minutes a night, I think that would be the ideal scenario, so that Wiggins would be able to develop his catch and shoot abilities, because they absolutely need somebody. That team, LeBron has gotten his 3-point shooting better. Irving is getting his 3-point shooting better, but that team doesn't have a 3-point shooter. Nobody on that team, whether it's on the bench or in the starting lineup, is a true, dead-eye 3-point shooter like most teams have.
No, I was just going to say that's something I believe with Blatt's offense. I think that's something that they absolutely need. You have to have that 3-point shooter in an offense like that when you're running the motion.
Well, a motion offense can definitely benefit from having guys that are going to be able to cut backdoor. Now, I haven't actually seen Blatt's motion offense run, and each one is different. But at the end of the day, any basketball offense is about, especially at the NBA level, it's all about getting screens. It's all about getting, a pick and roll opportunity, making a defender double one person and finding the guy that's open. You watch the Spurs play, that's what their entire philosophy is built upon, is getting somebody to double Tony Parker or getting someone to double somebody, and then you have the opportunity to hit the open man. And that's really what any motion offense is for, is it generally involves some screens to force defenders to switch so that you get a favorable matchup. For example, LeBron being guarded by the other team's point guard or, down low,
right,
or the other team's center out on the wing. any motion offense, that's what the basis is, that you either want to find the open guy or you want to create, or any basketball offense in general, is that you want to create a favorable matchup if you can't find an open shot.
Right.
And so having a team like that, where, you know, even if they're not knockdown shooters from the outside, if you have a guy like Andrew Wiggins who can dribble in a couple steps, you know, and really attack on those dribbles, maybe get to the rim, but he can absolutely pull up and hit the mid-range jumper. That's not out of place in the motion offense.
No, not at all. Not at all. But, I think we're pretty much in agreement that right now I think that team's really set up in a very good position. And I think we might even find that nobody knew about Blatt hardly at all when they hired him. There wasn't much info on him, but he might just be the right guy to lead this team. Once again, possibly like a Brad Stevens type, although Blatt's much older and he's been around for quite a long time. But I just think, with LeBron's decision and so forth, it makes the league a much better place, and I couldn't be happier. And
agreed.
And being a Celtics fan, it affects me pretty much for the worse. I mean, we got Cleveland draft picks. We got Cleveland in the East that we'd be going after in a few years, hopefully, if the Celtics become competitive. But as an NBA fan, I just simply couldn't be happier. And my mood will get taken down a little bit because we're going to be talking about Melo next, and I don't think people pretty much know the way I feel about him, but once again, I'm open. People can change. And I had said before he went to another team that, I was saying that he's a loser. He doesn't win wherever he is. And I was saying, if he went to another team, he could sway me in his favor. And I started to look at his re-signing a little bit differently in the last couple days. My initial thought was it's about the money. He's staying there because of the money. But I've got a couple theories out there. You had mentioned it to me. You'd mentioned to me, and that, for Melo, there is actually something to be said about, staying with the Knicks and believing in Phil and believing in Fisher. The team, I don't think they're going to win a lot this year. I think we mentioned them being about an 8, maybe a 9 seed, 8 seed, somewhere in that ballpark. But that team, he could be in a worse situation. I'm still not sold on him, but what I think they're actually doing, and I think it would be the perfect fit. And I want you to touch on this a little bit because you can explain it much better than I can. But after the season, they're going to have over $25 million in payroll next season. They're going to have a lot of money available, and by keeping Melo, that between Melo and Phil, that's definitely going to help recruit free agents. But where I'm going with this and where I want you to jump in a moment is, it's no secret they're going to run the triangle offense, and Fish is a disciple of Phil Jackson. He really is. He's like a little Phil Jackson. So they're going to run that offense, and I'd like you to break it down a little bit. You need a wing scorer. You got a wing scorer. You got Melo on that team. But this is where I'm going with this. I have a feeling they're going to make a play for Marc Gasol next year. And that's getting them the low post player they're going to need with the passing abilities that they're going to need. And, they picked up Calderon this year. You don't need the best point guard in a triangle offense. You don't need the best point guard in the league to run the triangle. But I just want to get a couple of your thoughts on that. But the Marc Gasol thing, that's the direction I think the team's going for next season.
So Marc Gasol would absolutely be a good fit in the triangle. So for the people who don't know, a triangle offense is basically predicated on spacing. You need to have people that are spread out 12 to 15 feet apart, I believe, is the the formula for the NBA court. And you need to have guys that, and the only way that you can really accomplish that is by having 3 guys on one side, and they are forming the triangle, and then you have two guys on the other side of the court, and they're actually forming another triangle, much bigger triangle, with the center. So where the triangle comes in really handy is if you have that one stellar player. When the triangle was so effective in Chicago, they had MJ. When the triangle was so effective in LA, they had Kobe in his prime. Both those guys and Melo, they can score from anywhere on the floor. It's not just about having a wing score, it's having a guy that can go inside and actually score inside too. So basically what you're trying to do with a triangle is you're trying to spread the entire defense out, and you want to run, as you said, you don't really need a true point guard, but one of the skills that your point guard really needs to have, which is why Derek Fisher was so effective as the point guard's triangle offense, the facilitator for that, is you need to have a point guard who can step in and definitely hit the corner three. Having other three-point skills is a boon, and definitely a plus. Jose Calderon can do that. Derek Fisher, he could do that. A big thing as far as what the triangle is trying to do is, again, you're trying to spread the floor out, and you need to really have a very elite wing scorer who can score from either outside or inside. You also need to have a big man who can at the very least make the smart decisions as far as passing goes. It's even better if he can score. I'm just looking at the free agent list for next year, and you had mentioned Marc Gasol. I think that he would be a good fit, and particularly on defense, he would really add a lot to that team. And this is pure speculation, but I don't see Marc Gasol leaving Memphis. The big man market, as far as next year's free agency, it's not as open as everyone thinks. The interesting team that has sort of started to implode last year, but actually has a lot of their bigs hitting the market, is Indiana. And you have Roy Hibbert, you have David West, and Luis Scola all hitting the open market there. So, Roy Hibbert, not the best passer, but he did play in Georgetown, and they run a offense that really requires a good passing big. David West can bang inside. I would, if I'm running a triangle offense, I would really like to have a better big man than that as far as his passing skills go. But, there isn't really a huge market there, and so I think that that's sort of hamstringing them a little bit. Again, you look at what the great teams had that ran it. Kobe had Shaq. You need to have that big man to feed down low, and that's a big reason why a lot of high school teams, I coach high school basketball for the listeners that don't know that, and I talk to a lot of coaches, and the second that they say, oh yeah, I think I'm going to run a triangle this year, my first thought is, wow, they must have a truly stellar scorer and a pretty darn good big man. Because if you don't have those two elements, the triangle sort of falters. You don't have the person that can feed your entire team and is that danger to spread out the floor on the wing. And you also don't have the big man. The triangle requires a lot of backdoor cuts that requires a lot of passing from the big men to feed those cutters. And if you don't have that, the triangle just really doesn't work out that well. Now, I'm not saying that Phil Jackson can't bring someone up and get them to that point. I don't think Cole Aldrich is really the solution there in the future, but you never know who they're going to get.
So, as a player, in your mental capacity, do you need to be a smarter player to be able to play the triangle offense? Do you need to, there are some offenses that can be picked up fairly easily. But, and I'm not super familiar with the triangle. I know how it works generally, but does it take a special type of player, too, with a very good basketball mind?
It depends on what position you're playing in the triangle. It's not like the flex, that's been made so popular by the Spurs, especially last year, or the Jazz. They like to run a flex. The big thing with the triangle is that if you are that main guy, you can't, because you are going to get fed the ball all the time, you can't turn into a J.R. Smith where you just turn into a volume shooter where you're putting up 40, 50 points a game. you still need to facilitate. And the other thing is that you need to have a general sense of, it's almost like an option offense in football, where you need to be able to make reads based on what the defense does and make your cuts and set up your different triangle options based off of that. Because the triangle it's all about basically taking what the defense gives you and running a specific option or a specific play out of it. So, you have the offense, which is the triangle, and then most coaches generally have, especially a guy like Derek Fisher or Phil Jackson, they're probably going to have, anywhere between 8 to 13 different options or different plays out of the triangle. Now, most high schools, they usually run about 4.
Right.
So, I mean, you do need to be able to recognize what the defense is giving you, recognize when you are being, full on denied the ball if you're the guy at the top of the triangle, not the mellow role, but the other guard, the 2 guard, because that guy usually comes to the top of the key or right in that area. And if you're being fully denied, you need to know that that option calls for the 4 to step up and set you a back screen, and you need to make that back cut to the basket. So it's just little things as far as reading what the defense is giving you and being able to react in the right way. And if you don't, it can really make the triangle offense falter. To be fair, I think that they have probably the 2 best guys to teach it in the league right now, and that's Derek Fisher and Phil Jackson.
Well, I think everybody knows that's going to be the direction they're going to go moving forward. Picking up players on the team. So they're actually a really hard team to read right now, only because their roster, like we said, we don't think they're going to be that great this year, but I think the following season their roster is going to be so different. So we don't know what the future of that team's going to look like, pretty much beyond Melo. So you don't know. One of the guys I'm really excited about on New York, though, and I think, once again, if Melo can mature a little bit, I think he's a little bit immature. If he can mature a little bit and get a little bit more into the team concept, Cleanthony Early he could definitely benefit from Melo's presence. In an older age, now that he's getting a little bit older, he's almost in that same situation as LeBron, to lead the youth movement with a team that has much less talent than Cleveland has. So the question is, can he mature and can he handle it? I've kind of come off on Melo hating over the last week or so because, let's face it, he's a heck of a scorer. I didn't realize that he's the Knicks' second best scorer of all time. He's right up there with Bob McAdoo and Bernard King. And normally when you think of Knicks and you think of scoring, the first name most people think of immediately is Bernard King.
Absolutely.
And Bernard King's sitting in third. So he is a very good scorer. I just like to see him mature a little bit. I think at the beginning I was all about the money. Now I'm thinking that he actually got together with Phil, got together with Fisher, and they're actually saying, we could do something here. We can do something here. But it's going to take time. He needs to understand it's going to take time. So I just kind of laid off the whole thought that he's just chasing the money and so forth. This actually might be the best move for him because, like you say, in that triangle offense, you have one of the best players in place right now to play that triangle. So,
well, the thing, I actually, it's funny because we're sort of switching positions here. I know last week you were all about, hating on Melo, and I was sort of defending him. I don't like him staying in New York, honestly. I think he's a great fit for the triangle offense, and I think that Jackson and Fisher went to him and they said, you're going to be our feature guy, which I think he knew that anyway, but it's definitely one of the things that will draw a player there, as opposed to actually Chicago, which is, he has to share the court with Joakim Noah and Derrick Rose, who, he's not going to be the feature player there. So I still think he would score a ton of buckets, but, in New York, he is the big dog, bar none.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely. I'm sure he wanted to be that big dog. We had mentioned that about Lance Stevenson, that if Melo
yep.
left, he'd be more than happy to go to New York and be that big dog. And I'm sure that's part of it. I'm not saying I'm loving him. I'm saying he has the chance to sway me. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, but you were talking about how he is set up in a better position where he is in New York, and I think that the triangle offense is a great fit for Melo. If you have a triangle offense with a scorer like Melo out on the wing, I mean, it's a really great position to be in as a coach. But as from Melo's perspective, I would almost say that he has shown that he isn't as interested in getting rings, because if he had gone to Chicago, I think that they have a much better chance of bringing home hardware than New York does. And I just think, I mean, you look at the team as it's constructed, they're built upon great defense. The only thing that they were lacking last year was a bona fide scorer, and Melo fits that description to a T. If you were able to get Melo's offense in Chicago, when they already have such a great defense built up there, that's sort of almost like the best of both worlds.
Well,
Um,
just playing devil's advocate for a second here, but let's say he goes to. I don't think he could have won no matter what he did in the fan because he's a player that, there's not a lot of love coast to coast for Carmelo. But just to play a little devil's advocate here, if he went to Chicago, then he's going to get ripped for chasing and abandoning his team. I mean, is it possible that he has a loyalty to the Knicks? That that's those are the questions I've been asking myself over the last couple days. I'm trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt here a little bit. So if he did go to Chicago, yeah, he would have to give up, his own personal stats. He'd have to be more like, he would definitely have to be a team player and sacrifice. But he'd have got ripped for doing that for chasing. So, it just makes it a little bit of a tough call. Who knows? Maybe he just really loves New York. But I think no matter what he did, there were going to be people who crapped on him.
oh yeah, I mean, I think that's going to happen no matter what. The interesting thing though is that nobody is really giving Pau Gasol any flack for leaving LA and going to Chicago, and yet he's in a very similar situation. He's on a team that's not very good in LA, very similar to Melo in New York. I think that he's surrounded by a couple aging stars, which very true in New York as well. And yet when he left and went to Chicago, I didn't hear any backlash. As a matter of fact, the LA media the LA Lakers thanked him. He left, and he's their best player unless Kobe comes back and is still Kobe. So it's an interesting fact that you bring that up, and yet another player who is in a very similar situation, that's a very similar age, and yeah, he doesn't have the media attention that Melo does, but he's still Pau Gasol. He's still a very good big man, and having him leave and going to Chicago is, it just shows that maybe Melo wouldn't have been villainized.
But there's a big difference. Paul Gasol's a likable guy. He's a likable guy, and
I have no opinion on Pau Gasol. He's completely neutral. Yeah.
See, I just think he's a likable guy personally, and I think that makes a I think that makes a huge. It's all public perception. Like you said, very similar situations, but because there's not that love fest for Carmelo, coast to coast, he was going to get ripped either way, and probably most basketball fans know that he is a very good player. Even last year, everybody's saying how down he was last year. He was hurt. He didn't play a ton of games. But, he scored 17 and a half points. He had almost 10 boards a game. So, he's still definitely has game. But I think more people coast to coast are on your end of things. We're very neutral on Paul Gasol. So if he goes and does that, hey, Lakers fan, and Lakers fans anyways, they're out in L.A. Hey, thanks for what you did for us, man. And it's just the way it is. But I think it's because Carmelo's definitely not as liked out there mutually, and that brings us to Chicago. So I mean, him going there. What do you think that does for Chicago? And if we had this conversation yesterday, it'd be a different conversation because just today they picked up Meritic, Nikola Meritic. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he got drafted 3 years ago in 11 by Orlando. He's been playing overseas, and he's widely considered the best EuroLeague power forward out there. So
I
they
mean,
have
I'm a little hesitant. I'm a little hesitant to say that somebody who's been playing in Europe is going to be able to translate his game here. But I mean, I do like the team that Chicago is building, at least for the next couple of years. The interesting thing, and I would almost say that them going out and getting Gasol with that news, I actually hadn't heard that news until just now. Them going out and getting Gasol with that news, it makes me wonder if getting Gasol was actually a better move. Because if they have a guy who plays a very European game here in the NBA in Pau Gasol, he can teach another European player how to play his European game in the NBA. It's, American basketball players, or at least they used to, I don't know about anymore. American basketball players are, it's so much more like Memphis, where it's like a grit and grind. You got these low post guys that are just going to bang you around and push you around, and they're going to sort of muscle their way to the basket, and, they're going to go get double doubles. Whereas the European big men, they really excel at passing. They're fairly good at, shooting outside jumpers usually, and they're pretty good at cutting back door and, finding their ways to the rim without just posting up. It would be it's interesting to see the fact that now that Chicago has somebody with Pau's offensive output from the low block, I think that really solves a lot of problems for them. I still think that small forward is a position of some weakness for them, but they have a good team. I mean, Derrick Rose, if he comes back and he's even 80% of the Derrick Rose he was before he went down, Jimmy Butler is a very good player. Again, I think small forward is a position of weakness. Right now they're, running Dunleavy there. And he's a good three-point shooter, but he's never going to go out and drop, well, unless he's playing a certain team from Houston, he's never going to go out and have a, 25-plus point game. Then, obviously, you go down to Gasol and Joakim Noah, and those are two of the better passing big men in the league. So it's an interesting idea that there is still, I mean, we were talking about a couple days ago about Melo going to Chicago when that was still on the table, and about how they were sort of becoming a basketball mecca in the Mideast there with Cleveland, with LeBron there. Indiana obviously still has a good team, and now Chicago. I think that's still there. I think that you still have a very good, quote-unquote basketball mecca with three very strong basketball cities. Indiana in particular has a very strong basketball tradition. Chicago does actually as well. I can't believe I just said that. But two cities in particular that have very strong basketball traditions, states that have very strong basketball traditions. I think it's a great fit, and honestly, possibly, as much as I was giving, saying Melo would be a good fit in Chicago just a couple minutes ago, we are on Take Sports. I didn't really have a chance to think about it. The future possibilities with Gasol, I think that he's a little bit more of a short-term solution. But if they bring in somebody that's European that he can coach up a bit, mentor a bit, it's interesting that we're talking about all of these guys as being mentors to younger players.
Right.
But if he can do that for that kid, we could be seeing the next Pau Gasol. We could be seeing the next great European to NBA big man.
And I mean, honestly, right now we don't know this guy's game. Hopefully, in the next day or two, I'm gonna check out some tape on him and so forth. But if this guy has got the type of game that I read about and so forth, you put him with Gasol, then you get Noah. I mean, your front court, that's a scary front court. And with a healthy Derrick Rose, you got one of the best point guards in the NBA. So yeah, they're definitely not a bad team, and um, they just picked up one of the best shooters out of the draft.
Yeah.
And we had mentioned that after the draft, that McDermott to the Bulls was actually a very, very good fit. They just re-signed Heinrich today, also. So
And McDermott just had a beast of a game today. I know that the last time I saw the stat book, he was at like 27 points and 7 rebounds or something like that. He is definitely a bona fide NBA player and an NBA shooter. I know that, even I honestly was doubting whether his athleticism was going to, allow him to continue to have the same game in the NBA. I was having sort of flashbacks to Jimmer Fredette, who was, an unathletic shooter coming out of the draft who had unlimited range. And obviously, Doug McDermott can do a lot more from the scoring end than Fredette could, who was basically just a 3-point shooter. But, seeing him play against NBA prospects and NBA talent, guys who are already in the league, and seeing him put out a game like that, that's some great future possibilities for that team.
definitely, and it's funny that the three teams that we talked about tonight, it's all coming down to these youth movements. The Knicks don't have it going on now, but you can see the pieces falling in place for that to happen. We already talked in length about Cleveland and so forth, but you talk about McDermott, you talk about him with the Bulls, and it was actually they've actually done great in the draft on that pick because they filled a need. They're filling a need at the same time, and they're another team. They're right up in there in discussion. With every time you talk about, unfortunately now every time you talk about the Bulls, though, you have to predicate it with a healthy Derrick Rose. And that's a big if. That's a big if right there. Because without him it doesn't work. But
I mean, that team still, let's not forget that team was still a contending team with DJ Augustine running the point. I'm not totally against Augustine there. And with the offensive output of Pau Gasol, maybe even bringing McDermott off the bench, if he can have, a 12, 15-point night consistently off the bench, I'm not totally against thinking that team can still contend, in like a 6 seed or a 5 seed somewhere in there. But you're absolutely right. If this team is going to be, a powerhouse out east, which is what I think that we both think that they can do, it is going to require a healthy Derrick Rose.
absolutely, absolutely, and they definitely, I think they did good. I think they did good in this picking up Gasol. I mean, he was the consolation prize. They made it no secret. They wanted Melo. They wanted Kevin Love. They were working ways to see how they could get their hands on Kevin Love. But if you're going to get a consolation prize and that prize is Gasol, there's nothing wrong with that. And he, like you said, going back to the mentoring again, is another one at his age who can start to, lead that youth movement. And for a 34-year-old, I don't think he's close to out of gas yet.
No.
He's got game in him left. So
Yeah, I agree.
I just another team that's in good shape and um, can set themselves up in a position that they can be in good shape for the future too. And I think we're saying that right now about more and more teams in the NBA.
Yep, I totally agree. I think that more and more teams. It's funny, we've sort of almost hit. I don't want to say like a lull, but we're seeing the guys that we're used to watching putting up all of the all the highlights every night on ESPN. We're starting to see them sort of age, and you're looking at LeBron. He's been in the league for I think 10 or 11 years now. Melo's a 30-year-old. The only one who is really sort of coming into his prime is Kevin Durant, and obviously I still think the ceiling's rising for him, but most teams in the league don't have somebody who is rising into that position. I think actually one of the other possibilities would be, James Harden in Houston, but that might just be the homer in me saying, well, Harden, Harden is a good player or whatever, and thinking he's going to keep getting better, hoping he's going to get better on defense. But if you're looking at around the league, I don't think many teams are going to be able to chase the next superstar in free agency without this youth movement growing up and starting to benefit, what else is coming around the league. I mean, even guys like Rajon Rondo, he's been hurt for a couple of seasons, but he's still starting to get up there in years. So we're definitely seeing a change in the NBA, and I'm pretty excited to see what's coming next.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a lull in the NBA. You even failed to mention Kobe. There's another one of the all-time greats who is quietly finishing up his career right now at this point. But I definitely agree with that. And what really gets me and what interests me the most about everything that's going on, and we've mentioned this, is I truly believe that the Spurs have pretty much changed the way of thinking of a lot of GMs. I know they've changed the way of thinking of a lot of GMs out there. And, the old get the three best players you can on your team and take it from there and roll the ball out and let's go. I think those days are kind of over, and more times than not, it worked in Miami because you can't say it didn't work in Miami. You win 2 out of 4, and you go all 4 times. It worked.
Yeah, it worked, but you look at the team now, and they're just not.
Right.
Even if they bring back Wade, they're not set up for future success.
Exactly my point. And they can't have that sustained success year in, year out. And people are doing what the Spurs did. People are, and you're seeing it, and I think right now is the time for that movement to happen because. I truly believe this is an excellent draft that came out this year. Last year's draft, I think we're going to find out, is better than what a lot of people thought. It may not be great. It's not going to go down as one of the greatest drafts of all time by any means. But I think there's going to be a couple players that come out of last year's draft that will be consistent all-stars in the future. So, I'm very interested in how all that goes down. And Chicago just is another team that falls into the mix of pretty much doing things the right way to keep themselves relevant year in and year out.
Well, I completely agree. Just looking at the time here, we normally are going to be ending with a couple of closing points. We definitely have gone over the hour mark at this point. So, let's try to keep it brief. Just, do a couple quick hitters. I know we spent a lot more time on LeBron than I was really expecting us to, or I thought we were going to. But, let's just jump around and get each other's quick 2 or 3 thoughts around what's going on in the league, and let's try to keep it brief, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had mentioned near the beginning that we were going to talk a little bit about the Orlando Summer League. Obviously, we ran out of time there, and pretty much talking about LeBron will make that happen. So I'm sure we're going to catch up on that and who some of the bigger players were in Orlando. Touch up on Vegas, but just a couple closing thoughts I have on free agency right now. Chandler Parsons ended up today, for the most part, is going to be a Dallas Maverick. I know you're not happy to hear that, but, looking at a few articles, kind of breaking things down a little bit. Trevor Ariza could end up actually being a better fit on that team. Not saying, I think Parsons definitely has much more upside and so forth, but I do think Ariza may be a very good fit on that team. And it does add an improved 3-point shot to that team. So, not the worst thing to happen to the Rockets in the world today. I think the Wizards are looking into the future a little bit. I think the whole Paul Pierce contract, him signing for 2 years, finishes up his career there. with an expiring contract. I actually think this is all setting up a position for the Wizards to make a run at KD when it becomes a free agent who is from DC. So we just might see another great player go home. And, we've talked about this a little bit tonight, but generally, and we just talked about it not 3 minutes ago, but I'm just really excited about the direction of the NBA right now, the young talent, and pretty much a lot of the teams following the mold that the Spurs are running with over the last few years. And that's pretty much what I have this week.
You're absolutely right. In that I'm not happy that Chandler Parsons left. I do think that Trevor Ariza gives us a little bit more athleticism and a little bit more a better perimeter defender. But and this is actually one of the things I was going to talk about. So I'm just going to respond to you here. I don't think that as far as what the Rockets want to build as far as a future plan. Again, we're talking about teams that are not trying to build around three guys, go after a championship and then kaput. And I think the Rockets actually, unfortunately, went in the opposite direction this offseason. We unloaded some good talent, and we went after, and we basically, we let Parsons walk instead of picking up his option and keeping him for less than $1 million this year. We have decided to go and pick up Trevor Ariza, and instead of restructuring Parsons' deal this year, I think we're playing with a less skilled small forward and somebody who's not going to continue to improve, somebody who doesn't have the chemistry with Harden and Beverly and Howard in place already. It's an interesting dynamic there, especially with Howard saying that he was positive the Rockets were going to bring Parsons back. So, that's just something that definitely has me thinking, honestly, a little bit disappointed in our front office. A couple other things, one of the other guys that we unloaded this year, which I think that was completely necessary based on his contract, but Jeremy Lin going to LA. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do out there. I think that he's a guy that if he's given the reins and he's told, hey, we just need you to score, instead of Houston trying to turn him into a point guard, and that obviously didn't work out so well. But if he's told that he has free reign to do what he wants, he's gonna have 5-6 turnovers a night. But he also has the capability to go off for 27 any given night, just because that is honestly that is what he can do. He's one of the more athletic point guards in the NBA. Actually, the Rockets do a player tracking thing in their practices and during the games where they measure basically acceleration, and they accelerate, or they measure a whole bunch of different measurables. And Jeremy Lin actually has the fastest acceleration in the entire NBA for point guards, which is an interesting stat to know. So he's definitely an athletic kid, and I'm pretty excited to see, especially, I obviously I want to see Kobe come back. He's one of the one of the guys that's really exciting to watch in the NBA. But if he doesn't, or he comes back and he's not at full capacity, again, we're talking about mentors. I think that Jeremy Lin is one of those kids that's dedicated enough to the game that he couldn't really have two better mentors than Steve Nash and Kobe Bryant, as far as guys who could possibly get him to the next level. One of his biggest weaknesses is footwork and getting himself stuck, and one of the best players to ever play the game as far as footwork goes is Kobe Bryant. So hopefully those two guys can work together, and we might actually be seeing somebody who, the continuation of Linsanity, but more on a more permanent level. And I can't imagine a better city for him to take over and energize than a team, a city like LA, and on a team with as much history as the Lakers. So, that wraps up everything I have to say.
All right. Well, of course we got long-winded this time of year, especially when such huge news goes down. But all in all, it's been a great week for the NBA. I was looking forward to do, as soon as the decision came down, all I could think about is I want to do a podcast, and I want to do it right now. So, I just can't. I'm looking forward to next week. I'm sure we're going to be able to touch a little bit more on some of the free agent moves and so forth. So it's something I'm looking forward to. It's been a great night.
Absolutely, I completely agree. It was nice talking to you, man.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.